I'm writing a paper on FL Studio for a class I'm in, music. The first place I look for information is the website because I need more information to to talk about the topic on FL Studio. I began my research process by going to flstudio.com because that's the main source of information where I can get PDF files and tutorials. I use the search terms FL Studio because that's the topic I am discussing. I choose this link because they are the creators of FL Studio. I will save this source because it can come in handy when I have to cite my information at the end of my presentation. I keep up with the information I located by saving the links and printing the information. I keep up with my sources. I change in my search terms to I changed my search terms to how to operate FL Studio because it might show me more details about the program. The next place I look for information is YouTube just to get a more visual concept. I think that's it. Um, the way I evaluate my sources to see the date of see how relevant it is and see um, the I can't think of the word. See how great of a source it is, like reliable, how reliable it is to others. Um, okay, okay. So that was in 15 minutes.
I'm writing a paper on Family Guy, a television show for English 1102, and I'll be using Google as my search engine. I prefer Google because I just find it reliable and it gives me all the sources I need most of the time. So, how I start my research is I just type in the topic. So, I'll be typing in Family Guy because that's what I'll be writing about. So, I'm clicking on imdb.com. It's a website used to, like, uh, basically giving the whole description of the show, when it was made, the first premiere, information that I'll need. So what I look about on the website is the subtitle of the episode I'm looking for, the description of the show, and the main characters. also the producers and the executives, so I can talk about what like how this started and how this came into part. So I'll save this source by copying the website into my Word document so I can later use a citation generator. So after copy and pasting a lot of this information, I usually just paraphrase what I see or summarize to avoid plagiarism. Uh, Next thing I'll go to is probably Wikipedia. It's known to be like a not really a reliable source, but some of this I only really depend on information I already know, which will expand to my prior knowledge. If I don't really understand anything from Wikipedia, then I won't put it on my paper. Sometimes I will see the information on Wikipedia and then try to put in my own words to avoid plagiarism. After Wikipedia, for this topic, I will go to YouTube to look at some videos um, to see how the show is, how it's set up, the runtime, and if there is a certain pattern in every single episode, so I can further analyze how the show is conducted. So that's for the show itself. After that, I'll probably find another article talking about since the show is about comedy, I'll probably find an article on comedy from like a reliable source such as New York Times or another um, reliable source. I do this because um, the more reliable source, the more like credible the paper is. Because if you have a source that isn't really credible, then it weakens your paper. So after using that source, I usually find um, like another source that can disagree with my claim. I do this because we were told about this in English 1101 that doing this can also strengthen your paper, finding arguments that oppose what you're saying. So after conducting all this research for my citations, what I'll do is I'll plug in all of the sources into a citation generator, and then copy and paste it into my Word document. Only thing I would need to fix is the indenting, because usually it doesn't paste as well, just copying and pasting to a Word document. So I just keep. I also would look for sources, like use sources that would be recommended by my professor on a rubric. If I can't find information I need from these sources, then I just go to other reliable sources. I think I recall that we were told that if it says .org, it's more reliable, and to always look for biased information if it's trying to sell a product or persuade the audience in a certain way. Since the purpose of this essay is to inform, then I would have to use a source that isn't really siding one side more than the other. Another topic of my paper is to how does it relate to our generation. So in order to do that, I would have to find information on our current generation, which is the millennials. So what I'll type in is millennial generation characteristics on Google. And I'll be clicking 8 millennials traits you should know about. I just prefer this because it has a list, so it's more easier to break down rather than just like a block of paragraphs and trying to extract information from that. So what I see here are like bullet points, characteristics of the generation, and from this I try to connect it to the television show, and I find similarities with them. And this I do this so it can further strengthen my argument that the show relates to our generation. So I usually jot down this information, write it, and then write in my own words so I can type into the Word document. So then I don't risk plagiarism. For example, a word multitaskers, I'd probably use like the ability to do multiple things at one time instead of using the exact wording. And this isn't really my go-to, but I was told in my 1102 class to use Google Scholar. Haven't tried it. Um, I don't think it'll work for this topic though because it's a television show, and I feel like Google Scholar will be too much of an intellectual source. So I would switch back to regular Google. Another reason why I use Google is because I feel like it does a good job of showing the websites that are visited most frequently, and I feel like that's the most reliable source, like how other people are using it, a ton of other people. I feel that Wikipedia might not be reliable at all times because anyone can post new information, but um, that inaccurate information can't stay there for a long time. And that's what I understand from it. So another thing I would usually do is it's sort of a bad habit, but I would type in um, I'll like type in Family Guy, the show that I'm using, and then I'll go into a source and use some information from that into my paper without citing it. Just in case it is inaccurate, I don't know what I do. It's a bad habit.